The DC deck building game is on our table once again. Short story here. DC deck building game was my first deck building game.
It was.
I played it before Dominion.
Yeah, I played it before Dominion or Ascension.
Yeah,
it was so unique at the time.
It was a very early one, and of course, this was the one that really brought, obviously, IP to the world of deck building, and it was like, oh, that's what hooked me. And since then, I would say it's the streamlined approach of it that kind of keeps me coming back to it for sure. And more recently, my son was like addicted to it
I would agree. I would call this a guilty pleasure kind of game for me because it doesn't fit with the heavy Euros that I play, but I'm all in. I have the multiverse box. I have all the dividers. Everything is sleeved. I'm up to date. So I'm very excited about this new set. This new set takes us to Arkham Asylum.
Yes.
And it introduces a bunch of new mechanics, of course, but from the start of it, again, we've seen this before, but you are playing as the villains this time. Huge roster of supervillains you can play as, like you'd kind of expect from a set like this.
Yes. We were playing just now. I was playing the Riddler. You were playing Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
But like Ryan said, there's 7 more over
Poison
here.
Ivy,
I don't know
Mr. Freeze.
what all. I think we have everything. It should be noted. This is a prototype in front of us. These are basically printed out cards and sleeves and whatnot. But yeah, we've got Freeze. We've got all sorts of them. And unlike the original DC deck builder, but like some of the ones in between then and now, this incorporates a lot of some of the best things that they've sort of added to the game as it's evolved, plus some new twists on some of those things. For instance, the villains that you play as have unique cards that go into your starting deck, which wasn't always the case, but it was added at one point.
It wasn't always the case. And they have, of course, powers like you'd expect to have. A lot of those powers will interact with some of the new mechanics from this game. So like a lot of their sets, this is cross-compatible. You can use these supervillains in other sets, but some of these abilities interact directly with new mechanics. Like, for example, Harley Quinn, and I think even the Riddler, interact with these victory point tokens, which, while maybe not exactly new, are being used in a completely new way in this set.
Yeah, the victory point tokens are really interesting. The Riddler actually uses these Riddler-specific tokens. I have these Riddler tokens right out here. Whenever I, as the Riddler, were to buy a card from the lineup like this, I'm going to add a face-down Riddler token to it. These Riddler tokens, I can look at them that are out here whenever I want. So I could take a look at this. This one says attack. The Riddler steals 1 VP from you. When another player purchases a card with a Riddler token, they have to reveal it and do the thing. And then it goes away. Plus, I actually get to draw a card at the beginning of my turn if I have even just one Riddler token out here, which is amazing because effectively I had a 6-card hand almost every turn.
And like I said in the beginning, you do play as supervillains, but it's worth noting that this deck setup, being Arkham Asylum, is kind of Bat-centric. It's kind of built around the Bat family. A lot of the heroes, the superheroes that you're fighting, because we are flip-flopping here, they're all kind of from the Batman mythos, leading up ultimately to potentially Batman himself as one of the villains. A lot of the cards you're seeing in the row are from the Bat family, related to Batman and his villains in some way, as are these hostages, which is an entirely new mechanic they've added.
Yeah, the hostages are something you can take. Instead of, in the base game, you have the punches and the kicks. You have the hostages and the henchmen here. The hostages are interesting because you can only take one of those during your turn. It's kind of like defeating a superhero. You're going to take that in your discard pile, but when you play it, it's an ongoing, so it goes out there, and then they have a new mechanic called release. If you have a hostage in front of you, like I have here with Jeremiah Arkham, I could release him and do this effect under the ongoing effect. But when you take them, you are also getting some stuff too.
Yeah, you're getting victory point tokens and things like that, maybe additional power. They're a neat mechanic, and there are a lot of cards within the actual deck in the lineup that you can buy that interact with hostage cards that maybe give you some benefits if you have a hostage in front of you, or let you discard a hostage for a different effect. There's some locations that trigger off when you take hostages. So they really have kind of built this around that idea of the hostages. And then, of course, you have the henchmen as well, which is just kind of your generic buy this card for more power. And this deck is all the same. And you can just buy a henchman if you want to.
But the one thing that henchman does that's new is it allows you to surge if you want to. And whenever you play a card that says surge, I think the ones I've seen usually say you may surge.
Yeah.
When you do this, it's kind of a temporary extra card in the lineup during your turn. You're going to take a card from the top of the deck and add it to the lineup like we have here. And it's going to effectively give you more options, more flexibility to the things you might purchase. Now that will, if I purchase a card, that's going to go down there before we refill. So you're not going to keep adding cards more and more to the lineup. But it is a cool way to give you a little bit more flexibility in terms of like, I still don't want any of these cards. I'm looking for something else, and you might be able to get something to pop.
Yeah, now let's talk about the crazy new mechanic.
This is the big one.
This is the big one. It's super interesting. I said earlier that you could earn victory points in this game, and we've seen maybe some characters that gave you victory points for different things. But in this game, there are a lot of different ways to earn victory points, and you are actually able to spend those victory points almost like a currency to bribe people around Arkham Asylum, which is a pretty cool thematic concept. A lot of these cards will also have a bribe cost in addition to their regular cost. You can spend victory points to bribe them, in which case you effectively take that card. It counts as if you've played it, but just for that turn. It comes here into a special bribe pile. At the end of your turn, all the cards that you bribed go to the bottom of the deck. So there were many instances, at least in our game, where you're just almost there.
You need
maybe
two more power.
A power too short, and it's worth spending those victory points to bribe the card. And these cards are effectively cards that you would normally play into your deck. So they do more than just adding power. They could draw you cards. They could get you hostages or henchmen. They could attack your opponent, whatever. Looking out and seeing what's available there and using your victory points smartly to bribe, I think is a key part of this experience.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be something you don't want to take lightly. You are spending victory points after all. But another variable there is you might see a card there depending on who you're playing against and go, oh, they absolutely want that card. I'm going to bribe it, use it. It's usually going to do something good for you.
Sure, usually.
It may not be, some of the bribes get pretty costly, and there are mechanics that allow you to sort of decrease the cost of a bribe all the way down to zero, which is interesting. But you may be able to take that, use it, put it on the bottom of the draw deck, and now it's buried, so that other player is not going to get it.
Yeah, those bribe cards definitely can come in clutch. They can definitely extend your hand and your turn. If you're in an instance where maybe you didn't draw the best hand, but there's a bribe out there that lets you draw more cards, you can spend it, draw more cards, and now you're kind of actually playing a hand. So they really do come in clutch.
Yeah, one more thing that I think has been in other games, at least in some variation, is the freeze token or the frozen token. I think there are other sets that allow you to put them on cards out here in the display so that no one can acquire them. Here, you can actually freeze other people's cards or even your own card in the case of Mr. Freeze in a sort of separate pile that's not your discard pile, it's not your hand, it's going to be kind of out of the game for a little bit. Once you have a frozen token on card or any cards, they're going to sit there until you reshuffle your deck. When you reshuffle, then you remove that and put them in your discard pile. So they're effectively out of the cycle for at least one shuffle.
Yeah, it's an interesting mechanic because you can do it to your opponent's high cost cards, but some cards will do it to your own.
Get rid of vulnerability.
Yes, so you don't draw them for a cycle or two. And again, there's a lot of different cards that might use all of these different tokens in different ways. So I mentioned this earlier, but when you're playing this particular set, even though you can mix and match, these cards are going to interact with the frozen tokens. They're going to interact with the victory points and the hostages and things like that. So you do there is some benefit, I think, to playing self-contained sets.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, the sky's the limit to how you want to mix and match these to create, crazy scenarios whatever you want, basically.
Yeah, I would say we played this self-contained set, and if memory serves me correctly, this one the game's always ramped pretty quickly. And it ramps big. This one moved up pretty fast for us in terms of being able to get to those big hands. We were able to sort of lean our decks out and had some pretty powerful hands.
I think the bribery really helps with that because the bribes that you get, they fill in those gaps. When you might have a turn that ends poorly, they really do fill in those gaps.
Yeah, they're just extra points, and you might want to look down and go, okay, I've got 7 points. You've got about 7, maybe 5. I'll spend a couple.
Sure.
It keeps us even there. As long as our decks are about the same, things should shake out pretty well. But that is the Arkham Asylum set for DC deck building. If you have any questions at all about it, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and answer whatever we can. Until next time, though, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.